They served her champagne. I served her legal papers. Hi, I'm Marlo. At my own mother's gala, while she was on stage talking about legacy, I had my lawyer walk up and hand her documents exposing years of betrayal. Why? Because she sold the home I built, erased my name from the story, and used the money to fund my sister's healing journey. No apology, no warning, just silence. But what happens when the strong one in the family finally says enough? What happens when silence becomes evidence? Have you ever had to break your own heart just to finally be seen? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story too. Now let me show you how this all began. You think I'll smile and clap while you auction off my life's work like party favors? That line snapped from my lips before I even realized I'd stood up. All eyes in the gala room turned toward me, a ripple of silence spreading outward like a dropped wine glass. Across the ballroom, my mother, Celeste Quinn, stood at the podium, frozen mid-sentence, her champagne flute hovering just beneath her smile. I saw her mask flicker, a barely perceptible twitch near her jaw. She recovered quickly. Celeste always did. "Oh, darling," she chuckled into the microphone, "Marlo's just being modest. She's the creative genius behind the Quinn Legacy home. We're so proud to have gifted it to Thayer as he steps into his next chapter." Laughter and scattered applause followed, unsure and polite. Gifted? My fists clenched at my sides. The Quinn Legacy home wasn't just a house. It was my project, my blueprint, my savings, and 6 years of sweat equity. I'd designed every beam and paid every invoice. I even declined a major fellowship to stay close and maintain it, because Celeste had said, "This home is our legacy." Apparently, I wasn't part of the hour anymore. I forced myself to breathe. Inhale, exhale. I looked down at the place card they'd assigned me. Marlo Quinn, design consultant. Not owner, not even architect. I was listed like a +1 to my own life's work. My seat had been tucked near the kitchen doors, far from the media table where Thayer now laughed too loudly at something vapid. He wore a desert-toned linen suit, probably custom-tailored, his Instagram-perfect curls bouncing as he nodded at yet another compliment about his vision. I stood, walked past rows of suited men and bejeweled women who half-smiled at me without recognition. I made my way to the stage. Celeste didn't flinch, not even when I climbed the 3 steps up to the microphone beside her. "This wasn't agreed on," I said, calm even. "I never signed it over." The air thickened. Forks paused mid-bite. Thayer's smile faltered. Celeste leaned toward me, her voice low and sugary. "It's still family property, darling. You wouldn't make a scene over love, would you?" I looked at her. Her flawless silk gown, her curated warmth, the charity pin glinting under the chandelier. A curated goddess of benevolence, adored by the Portland elite, the kind of woman who could burn you down with a hug. I stepped back from the mic. "This isn't love, it's theft." Gasps, soft murmurs. I caught someone near the press table filming. Then I walked off the stage. No apology, no drama. Just the heels of my boots hitting the marble floor, each step louder than the last. The room, stunned into silence, parted for me like a tide. No one followed. Not Thayer. Not my father, Douglas, who had been sitting by the sidebar swirling scotch and cowardice. Not even Juniper, my cousin, who locked eyes with me but didn't move. She just gripped her phone tightly, knuckles pale. Outside, the cold air smacked my face like reality. I didn't cry. Not yet. I climbed into my car, hands still trembling. Before I started the engine, my phone buzzed. Email. Title transfer confirmation. Newport property. From Westbridge Realty. Date. 7 days ago. Subject. Final deed transfer filed under Celeste Quinn and Douglas Quinn. My breath caught. They'd already sold it. Behind my back, without a word, before the gala, before the announcement, before the applause. My mother hadn't made a mistake. She'd made a plan. Later that night, back in my apartment, I sat in silence. I lit the candle I always used when rendering blueprints and stared at the photo on my hallway shelf. It was a picture of me standing outside the condo, holding the original permit approval like a trophy. Celeste had taken that photo. She'd captioned it, "Marlowe's first masterpiece." Now she called it Thayer's gift. I glanced down at the coffee table. My gala invitation was still there, printed on thick cream cardstock, embossed in gold. The Quinn Foundation, Legacy and Light. A lie, beautifully typeset. From my drawer, I pulled out a flash drive labeled Quinn Property, Master. Inside were years of files, design drafts, budget spreadsheets, repair invoices, furniture receipts, all in my name. I'd kept them out of instinct, maybe for taxes, maybe because I'd always felt like I had to prove my worth. Tonight, they felt like ammunition. I clicked through a few folders. My eyes caught on a photo Juniper once took. Me on a ladder painting the front porch. Celeste in the background sipping wine, supervising. "Smile, Marl," Juniper had said. I hadn't. And now I knew why. I closed the laptop, reached for the velvet box I'd hidden at the back of the closet. Opened it. Inside, a copy of the original blueprint signed with my full name, Marlo Elise Quinn. I whispered it aloud. Then I made a new folder on my desktop. The things they rewrote. Funny how I was never part of the legacy until it was time to pay the bills. That thought echoed as I stood in my kitchen, fingers wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug I'd bought at a flea market years ago. The bitter coffee inside had gone cold hours ago, but I hadn't moved. Not since opening my inbox and seeing the subject line. Utility reminder, Newport property. Sent by Celeste. Not a greeting. Not a, "How are you holding up?" Just, "The water bill's due. You've always been great at keeping us afloat." XO. Mom. I stared at that line like it was written in blood. After the gala, I hadn't spoken to anyone. No calls, no apologies, no explanations. Just that email. Like nothing had happened. Like I hadn't been humiliated and erased in front of 200 people and a press corps. I set the mug down with a loud thud. My apartment was silent, save for the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sound of rain smattering the windows. I crossed the room to my desk, opened my laptop, and clicked into the one folder I had never deleted. Quinn Property. Inside, 6 years of invoices, permits, utility confirmations, HOA payments, repair photos, design drafts. I clicked. The replacement water heater receipt, the $74 gutter cleaning after that October storm, the $2,326 roof patch job, the $92 plumbing charge after Thayer's holistic herbs clogged the drain, the $511 to fix the fence after his dog chewed through it. Every single one in my name. Everyone paid from my account. Not out of obligation, but because no one else stepped up. I opened a new spreadsheet and began entering line items. Column A, description. Column B, date. Column C, amount. My fingers moved faster than my mind could keep up. This wasn't just bookkeeping. It was an act of remembrance. 3 hours later, I had over 100 rows. At the bottom, I typed, total, $61,487.73. The number didn't shock me. What did was the sudden bone-deep exhaustion that followed. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. Then I grabbed my phone and opened the banking app tied to the old utility account. I hadn't checked it in months. I'd thought I shut it all down. I was wrong. Transaction date, 3 weeks ago. Description, City of Newport, water services. Amount, $321. Completed. The payment had gone through, under my name, on my routing number. I dug deeper. 5 weeks ago, someone had reactivated the account. I froze, then exhaled, slowly. Only one person had access to my old credentials. Celeste Quinn. It wasn't even a clever theft, just lazy betrayal. I clicked into my email and opened a blank message, addressed it to both of them, Celeste and Douglas. Subject: Financial clarification. Newport property attachment. Quinn receipts. Final.xlsx body. Hi, Mom and Dad. Attached is a detailed breakdown of my financial contributions to the Newport property from 2017 to 2023. These include but are not limited to utility bills, HOA fees, capital improvements, and maintenance work. Please respond with a formal explanation of how proceeds from the property sale were distributed and whether reimbursement will be issued based on these contributions. Until this matter is resolved in writing, I will not be contributing to any family-related financial obligations. This address is no longer available for emotional or financial deposits. I stared at the last line, then added it to my email signature. Hit send. I didn't tremble, didn't pace, just closed the laptop and stood. That night, I lit the candle in my hallway window again. Not for clarity, not for peace, for proof. 3 days passed. No reply, not even a read receipt. The silence settled like mold. Familiar, insidious. But this time, I didn't question myself. Not when I opened the fridge and found the same half-empty container of yogurt from a week ago. Not when I passed the old photo of Celeste hugging Thayer, framed perfectly on the wall of my childhood home, still in my memories like a crime scene frozen in time. I remembered being 26, asking Celeste for help covering rent after my freelance contract fell through. She had said, "We're all tight right now. Can't you pick up more hours?" I had. I'd worked 2 jobs for 3 months, tutoring design students by day, writing copy for dentist websites at night. That same year, Thayer moved back home to detox from capitalism. Celeste turned the guest room into a crystal sanctuary for him and told me not to judge. I sat back at my desk and opened my banking app again. Insufficient funds. Draft declined. I smiled. Just a little. Then I picked up my phone and typed a text. Sent it to both Celeste and Douglas. I won't be contributing anymore. Put the phone down. Turned it face down. Walked into the kitchen. Opened the drawer under the microwave. Pulled out the envelope I'd labeled, "If I ever need to prove it." Inside, printouts. Copies of deeds, copies of payment logs, screen grabs of text threads where they called me our rock. I added one more printout, the bank activity log showing the account reactivation, filed it in the folder. That night, just before bed, I opened Instagram. Thayer had posted again. A windswept photo in New Mexico, arms outstretched. Captioned, "Some people hoard houses. I'm out here freeing my spirit." In the comments, "You're breaking generational cycles. Not everyone deserves your light. You've survived so much. Keep rising." And right there, my mother's comment, "You've always been the light, darling. Let no one dim that." I didn't scream. I didn't throw away my phone. I took a screenshot. Then I opened a new folder. The lies they told together. Have you ever discovered that the people who raised you also tried to erase you? That kind of betrayal where your love was real, but their version of you wasn't? If that hits close, drop a number 7 in the comments. Now, let's see how she takes her story back. If silence built their empire, then documents will be my wrecking ball. That sentence came to me while staring at the blinking cursor of a blank email. It had been nearly a week since I sent my parents the spreadsheet and heard nothing. Not a single word. But I hadn't been idle. I was done waiting for validation. I needed something stronger than words. I needed structure, proof, teeth. So I booked a consultation with a lawyer I found online, Everett Mays. real estate and probate specialist. His photo on the firm's site showed a tired man in his 40s with rolled-up sleeves and a stare that said, "Try lying to me." Just what I needed. His office sat in a narrow brick building wedged between a used bookstore and a Pilates studio in downtown Portland. Inside, the walls were lined with dusty casebooks and a faint smell of wood polish. Classic, calculated, unapologetically old school. "You must be Marlowe," he said, standing as I walked in. His voice was calm, clipped, like he had a stopwatch running in his head. "Come in, let's talk." I didn't waste time. I pulled out my USB drive, handed over a printed list of my contributions, and opened my laptop to show him my organized folders: HOA invoices, repair receipts, maintenance quotes, even calendar screenshots with entries like "Met roofer at 10 a.m., solo." He scrolled through them without speaking, just nodding occasionally, eyes narrowing at the transaction logs. When he spoke, it was quiet, but deliberate. "You've documented all of this?" "Yes," I said. "For years. Not because I expected to use it, because I knew I'd be forgotten if I didn't." He glanced up. "You weren't wrong." That hit harder than I expected. He leaned back in his chair and laced his fingers. "Legally, this is impressive. But here's the cold truth. Unless your name was on the title or a formal agreement exists, you're what the law calls an informal contributor. Legally generous, but unprotected." I felt my chest tighten. I'd known this, but hearing it said aloud made it real. "But," he continued, "this account activity, reactivating an old shared utility account in your name, charging your routing number without consent, that's potentially criminal. And provable." My pulse steadied. "We can send a formal letter," he said. "Document everything, demand clarification, and if they fail to respond within 7 days, we file for breach and misappropriation." I nodded. "Do it." He paused. "You sure? This isn't just sending an angry email. This will escalate things fast." "They already escalated," I replied. "I'm just refusing to keep playing dead." His mouth twitched. A smile, or something like it. "I'll prepare the draft today," he said. Back home that evening, I sat at my desk, watching the sun slide behind downtown buildings. My apartment was quiet, but this time the silence felt loaded, not empty. I opened the folder labeled "If I Ever Need to Prove It" and added a new file. A recording of our meeting, with Everett's consent, along with the signed letter draft and affidavit template. I scrolled back to a voice memo I'd made months ago after Celeste had called me too intense for insisting on invoices after a plumbing repair. The recording played her exact words: "Not everything has to be a transaction, Marlowe. Some of us give out of love." And yet, here I was, counting the costs of her version of love. The next morning, I walked the sealed envelope to the post office myself. I didn't trust a Dropbox. I wanted to see it handed over. Logged. Real. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with chipped red polish and tired eyes, took the envelope. "Certified with tracking?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "This one's too important to disappear." As I left, my phone buzzed. A new voicemail. I didn't recognize the number. I waited until I got home to play it. "Hey Marlowe, this is Thayer." His voice cracked with fake casualness. "I heard from Mom that you're, making things weird. Can we just talk? Maybe not bring lawyers into it? You know she's sensitive." I stared at the wall for a long moment, then deleted the message. Later that night, as I was reheating leftovers, a knock landed on my door. My stomach dropped. I peered through the peephole. No one, but at my doorstep sat a cardboard box. No return label. I brought it inside and opened it carefully. Photos. Dozens of them. Childhood trips. Birthdays. Me and Thayer in matching pajamas. Me in my high school graduation gown. Celeste smiling behind me, one hand on my shoulder, the other gripping a wine glass. And at the bottom, a small envelope. Inside, a single scrap of paper. It didn't have to be like this. Mom. No apology. Just guilt. Strategic guilt. I dropped it into the shredder. Then I printed a copy of the certified mail receipt and placed it in my folder. If I have to burn the family tree to reclaim my name, so be it. That was the only sentence running through my head as I sat at the cafe table, legs crossed, waiting. The cafe was all exposed brick, reclaimed wood, and glass jars full of herbs, Portland aesthetic at its finest. It even smelled curated, lavender and expensive regret. I'd arrived 15 minutes early, picked the farthest corner table, and placed my phone face down on the table beside the small black recording device hidden under my scarf. Before leaving home, I had stood in front of my hallway mirror, adjusting the lapel of my navy wool coat. My reflection stared back, calm, cold. Not the version of me who once cried quietly in the pantry after Celeste dismissed my concerns about refinancing. Just before I walked out, I slid an old photo into my pocket, one where I stood on the porch of the condo after repainting the railing. Celeste had snapped it, telling me, "You're building legacy, darling." I believed her then. Now I was here to confirm how much of that had been performance. Celeste arrived first. Oversized sunglasses, beige trench coat, silk scarf wrapped perfectly. She looked like she'd walked off the cover of a lifestyle magazine for women who drink forgiveness like wine. She gave the room a once-over before removing her sunglasses with the flourish of someone used to being seen. She sat without a word. Thayer followed, breezy as ever in a loose cardigan and beaded bracelets, carrying some oversteeped chai monstrosity. "Hey," he said to me, like this was a normal brunch. I didn't respond. My hands folded calmly over the folder in front of me. The table between us felt like a courtroom bench. Celeste was the first to break the silence. "This has gotten unnecessarily adversarial," she said, tone neutral. "We're still family." I slid the folder across the table, opened it, pulled out the documents, one by one. Bank logs, title transfers, screenshots. Then I spoke, each word flat and precise. "You transferred the property before ever asking me." "That home was never just yours," Celeste replied carefully. "It was always meant to be part of our family's foundation." "No," I said. "It was my work, my investment. My name was on every utility bill, every blueprint. You didn't just take a house. You took history and rewrote it." Thayer rolled his eyes. "You've always been so obsessed with control, Marlo. Maybe try unconditional love for once." I turned to him, sharp and still. "No, Thayer. You've just been really good at making your chaos everyone else's job." He blinked, surprised, probably not expecting me to say it out loud. Celeste leaned forward, voice lowered like a warning. "We raised you better than this. I raised you to be generous." "What happened to that girl?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. She woke up. There was a flicker. Something behind Celeste's eyes. Guilt? Number calculation. She reached into her purse and laid a small printed photo on the table. It was of me and Thayer, barefoot in the backyard, faces smeared with frosting, laughing. "You remember this?" I didn't look down. "I remember fixing the fence in that yard when you wouldn't call anyone after Thayer's dog tore it up." Celeste's expression dropped. "Are you really going to destroy this family in public?" she asked, suddenly breathless. "Because you destroyed me in private," I answered. A long silence followed. Thayer fidgeted with his straw. Celeste stared at me like she could will me into softness again. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a sealed envelope, and laid it between us. "This is for your PR firm. since you're preparing for damage control. Celeste's hand froze mid-reach. What is it? She asked, her voice suddenly much smaller. A certified copy of the civil notice. You've been served. Thayer swore under his breath. I stood, calmly gathering my scarf. You didn't think I'd say anything, I said, adjusting my coat. But I did. You didn't think I'd prove it. But I have. And now, you don't get to decide who I am anymore. Celeste sat stiffly, her lips parted like she had something to say, but nothing came out. I turned and walked away. As I passed a nearby table, a girl who couldn't be more than 6 whispered to her mother, "Why did that lady give them papers?" The mother quickly hushed her, eyes darting in embarrassment. Outside, the air was cool and sharp. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. As I rounded the corner, my phone buzzed. A message from Everett. They've gone public. Celeste just retained PR counsel. We expected this. Back at home, I entered quietly. I took off my coat and laid it over the chair, noticing how the seams creaked as if exhaling with me. I walked into the kitchen and placed the recording device gently into a fireproof box. Then I opened the drawer that held my growing archive. I pulled out a fresh label and stuck it onto a new folder. Official notices, lies that sparked truth. Before I closed it, I added the old photo I'd carried in my pocket all day. The porch. The paint. The lie I used to believe in. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. Since you made it public, let's make it official. That was the last thing I whispered to myself before stepping out of the rideshare and into the glowing entrance of the downtown Portland Grand Regency. Tonight was Celeste's crowning jewel, the Quinn Foundation's annual gala, themed Legacy and Light. The banner hung in gold script over the marble steps, illuminated by a flood of soft amber light that made everything feel aspirational, pure, manufactured. It was the same hotel where I once presented a design pitch at 23, shaking behind my portfolio, with Celeste gripping my shoulder like a trophy. Tonight, I was walking in alone. No portfolio, no shaking, just silence. And Everett Mays, 15 feet behind me, carrying a legal envelope that weighed more than paper. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and curated sound. Strings played a delicate version of Clair de Lune, as if the night itself wanted to lull the crowd into a sense of reverent safety. Everyone wore champagne tones. Crystal clinked, cameras flashed. Everything was perfect, until it wasn't. I didn't need to look for her. Celeste was center stage, literally. She stood beneath a ring of warm spotlights, in a floor-length white gown with a gold sash that read, "Legacy Chairwoman." Around her, donors and socialites hovered like satellites, orbiting her curated gravity. Douglas stood a few paces back, chatting with a developer whose name I remembered mostly because he once told me, "You don't look like an architect." Thayer was by the photo wall, laughing with a girl in a floor-length velvet dress who clearly thought trauma made men deep. I crossed the floor, heels echoing like a countdown, but no one noticed me yet. They would. Celeste raised her glass and tapped the microphone. "Thank you all for coming," she began. Her voice was warm honey, practiced. The Quinn Foundation has always believed in women, especially those brave enough to build legacy out of challenge. That's what we're celebrating tonight. The builders, the dreamers, the daughters. She paused there, right where she wanted the crowd to gasp at the emotional crescendo. Perfect timing. Everett stepped forward. He didn't shout. He didn't even raise his voice. Just walked toward the stage with measured calm, pulled a folder from his briefcase, and said clearly, "Mrs. Celeste Quinn, you are being formally served on behalf of Marlowe Quinn for civil fraud, misappropriation of property, and identity-linked financial misconduct." Silence. The room froze like a glitch in a video. Celeste blinked. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Someone in the crowd gasped audibly. The sound of a champagne flute cracking under pressure followed somewhere near the back. Everett extended the documents to her, his expression unreadable. She took them with trembling hands. In the sudden quiet, the ballroom lights felt too bright. Someone's phone clicked. A second later, a third flash went off. I stood at the edge of the crowd, arms folded. I didn't smile. Celeste looked up slowly. Her eyes scanned the room, looking for help, for a friendly face, for control. Then she saw me. There it was. One breath. One flicker. The mask slipping. Thayer rushed toward her. "Are you serious right now?" he shouted, arms flailing. "You're doing this? At her gala?" Everett turned to him and replied, "Actually, Mr. Quinn, this is Marlowe's house you're standing on. You just redecorated." That line would end up trending online by midnight. The PR team scrambled. One of the interns handed Celeste a shawl to drape over her sash. A sponsor quietly slipped out the back. Another whispered to a reporter, and within minutes, a live stream that had been panning over flower arrangements had cut to the headline, "Founder served on stage, Quinn family under legal fire." Have you ever stayed silent for so long, until you finally chose to speak, and everything shifted? That moment when truth walks into the room and doesn't flinch? If you've ever made that terrifying, powerful choice, comment number 9 below. Now, let's watch what happens when the silence ends. I left before the end. As I walked through the exit, I passed Juniper near the coat check. She didn't say a word, just gave me a small nod. I nodded back. Outside, the Portland air was crisp. Rain misted lightly across my face. It wasn't dramatic or cinematic. It was just honest. When I got home, I poured tea, opened my laptop, and logged into the social feed. Photos were already going up. Not of the dresses, not the lighting, of the moment. A blurry but clear enough shot of Everett handing over the envelope, Celeste's face stricken in disbelief, and in the background, me. Still, calm, watching. I didn't post anything, didn't comment. I didn't need to. Instead, I uploaded one image to my private drive, a scan of the deed, my original blueprint, my name in black ink, next to a watermark that read, "Submission date, January 2017. That's what I'd built. And now, that's what I'd reclaimed. Just as I was closing my laptop, a notification slid across the screen. Subject: Immediate action required, sponsor termination clauses, triggered from Everett Mays. 2 major sponsors have begun formal withdrawal. One has requested a statement of ownership history. They want to distance themselves, fast. Local press has called for a televised interview. Do not respond. Let them sweat. I sat back in my chair. Outside my window, the rain had turned to sleet, streaking across the glass like static. They wanted legacy. They wanted light. Now they'd get exposure. Healing doesn't arrive like a grand parade. Sometimes it sneaks in quietly, with a deep breath, a mourning without dread, or a silence that no longer hurts. A week had passed since the gala. The headlines had burned hot for 4 days before flickering out, replaced by celebrity gossip and a local scandal involving a dog show and tax fraud. But the consequences hadn't disappeared. Celeste issued a carefully worded statement about deep family miscommunication, but it barely made a dent. 2 sponsors pulled out. 3 board members resigned. The gala footage had been dissected, slowed down, turned into memes, and finally tucked into the digital archives. I didn't need to post my side. The image had done its work. One quiet Thursday morning, with fog pressed against my window and the world still hushed, I opened a new document on my laptop. No evidence folder, no rage, no mission, just me. It began as a letter I never planned to send. Dear Celeste and Douglas, this isn't an olive branch. It's not a goodbye either. I'm not writing to punish or invite you back in. I'm writing to reclaim the parts of me you misnamed. The words came easily. I wrote about patching the roof with money meant for my first trip abroad. About the way Thayer's crises swallowed every room. About being the strong one until I cracked silently, unseen. I ended the letter with one clear line. I am no longer available for roles you wrote without asking if I wanted to audition. Then I saved it in a folder labeled, "Not sent, still true." That night, I took the box Soraya had given me weeks ago off the top shelf of my closet. I hadn't opened it. I wasn't sure if it was an apology or a trap. But I no longer needed it to be either. Inside were old photos, birthday cards, a necklace I'd given her when I was 16, and at the very bottom, a letter. I didn't know how to be your sister when you didn't need saving. I thought silence meant strength. I'm learning now that it doesn't. I closed the box without crying. The next morning, I texted Everett. Let's move forward. We filed a formal asset reconciliation request. Not for the money, for the record. I was done with being erased. The world didn't need to know, but the paperwork would. A week later, I signed the final affidavit. The closing line read, Marlo Quinn, primary financial contributor, Newport Property, 2017 to 2023. A few mornings after that, I woke before my alarm. My apartment was still wrapped in a soft blue dawn. I made tea, pulled a blanket around my shoulders, and stepped onto my small balcony. It wasn't grand, no skyline view, but it was mine. I looked down at the street. A woman walked her dog. A delivery van passed. Life moved forward without fanfare. And I liked that. I liked being unremarkable. I liked not being the one holding everyone else together, or tearing them apart. Later that day, I met Juniper for coffee. She slid a folder across the table. It's a grant proposal, she said, for women in architecture who've been left out of their own blueprints. We want you on the committee. I didn't ask what she meant, I just said yes. Before we parted, she paused. You don't owe anyone a conclusion, she said. But I'm glad you didn't let silence have the last word. That evening, I lit a candle in the kitchen window. The same window I once stood by as I called my mother for help, and got none. This time, I wasn't asking. This time, I was whole. 3 months later, a certified letter arrived. The civil matter had been closed by mutual agreement. No payout, no apology, no press, just one signature. Celeste's. There was no message, no admission. But it didn't sting, because I had already closed the chapter on my own. I opened my journal and wrote, You can reclaim your story without asking permission. And I meant every word. The next morning, I walked to the river. The dock was still damp from overnight rain. I found a flat stone, held it in my palm, and whispered into it all the words I'd never said. Then I let it go. It skipped once, sank quickly. The ripples faded, and I walked home. Not in triumph, not in mourning, but in peace. I'm no longer holding my breath. The silence that once felt like exile now feels like freedom. I have my name, my peace, and my place, and I didn't have to destroy anyone to reclaim it. I simply stopped letting them narrate me. What I've learned is simple. Being the strong one doesn't mean staying quiet. It means knowing when to speak, when to leave, and when to choose yourself even if no one else ever did. Betrayal doesn't have the final word if you're willing to write your own ending. Have you ever been the strong one in a family or relationship that took your silence for consent? What happened when you finally said no? Tell me in the comments. I read every story, because your voice deserves to be heard too. And if you've ever wondered what happens when someone who never breaks finally does, subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next.